Hello YouTube! I am Pinstar and this is Megaquarium Strategy and Tactics Quick Tip. So today we are going to talk about worker efficiency, worker planning, and general aquarium layout for maximum efficiency and effectiveness in terms of keeping everything supported. Now last episode we talked about getting these tanks up and running and getting fewer pieces of equipment supporting more tanks to reduce the rate of which it would take our people to get fixed. Now, one of the other tips I have for you in terms of keeping things going here is to just, in general, minimize the number of times your workers need to turn. And by turn, I mean turn corners. The last thing that you want is to have sort of a jagged edge type of deal. Like, for example, if we were, and I'm just grabbing random objects here to show and prove a point, you wouldn't want something like this. You wouldn't want this because this would be here, turn, up this way. Much better to instead have a square corner like this, all the way down, turn. Much better way to do that. And you'll see that it seems like a minor benefit to your workers, but it pays off in the long run in terms of worker efficiency. Now then, one other thing you want to make sure you do is close off your areas from guests so they don't see your equipment, because you lose prestige when your guests see your equipment. More on prestige in a future video. The other thing is, when you're at the beginning of a level here, like we are here, you don't want them wandering throughout the entire aquarium because they're going to start getting hungry and need the bathroom and drinks and food. And unless you're going to stock everything with all the amenities, which you don't really want to do, better just to wall them off and have confine their wandering space so that you don't go off too far, because it's really cheap and easy just to blow away those walls and fix things up later on. So what I'm going to do here is, let's get a staff door. I'm going to put that up here. One other tip is you can use bathrooms to seal off some of these areas. So bathroom to the side here will prevent people from wandering back to the equipment room, but also make use of some of this this negative space here, because the bathroom has to be a 2-tile long deal. And then just to prevent wandering, let's go out like that. Bada boom, bada bing. Now they'll stick to this general vicinity. Now in this particular scenario, we're going to want to have a couple of benches here. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. I actually messed up the placement here. When you're placing your tanks across from each other, I actually prefer to do 4 spaces in distance, like this. There's a couple of reasons for this. One is that you can put stuff in between them and still leave these viewing spaces open. So, for example, we can have 2 benches like that. Plenty of seating area, but everyone still can get to all the viewing spaces for your 2 tanks. You can do things like fizzy vending machine on one side, the chocolate on the other, like that. And you can do, things like a bin over here, and maybe once you've researched it, some gift shop items over here. Very compact, very efficient, but it still leaves people room enough to maneuver. The one thing I would recommend is when you have staff doors like this, don't put anything in the way here, because again, you don't want them walking diagonally to get around, because you're going to have staff going in and out of here to feed the fish in the lagoon tank. Speaking of feeding the fish, another thing with the feeding is you want to keep in mind the fewer turns the better. So, what we'll want to do here is, let's put the dispenser here. A couple more dispensers. We'll do like a green dispenser here, our mussels dispensers over here. And they'll come down here grab one of the food, have to make only one turn, or 0 turns in this case, grab the food, and then wander back up. That's not very long. You could put one over here, but I'm going to put a future tank over here. Also, don't forget to put your other support stuff, your tool station especially, a broom closet thingy here, and of course our sponge sink. The sinks and the brooms probably will not be put to use in the earlier stages of your aquarium, but it becomes more and more critical as more and more people start showing up. That's about it. As far as like the frequency of placing all this stuff, again, keep an eye on the service radius. You know, like this toilet right here will pretty much reach everyone. If somebody is up here and they realize, oops, I gotta go to the bathroom, they'll be able to quote unquote see this toilet and will make their way down here to go relieve themselves and satisfy their need. As long as they are within the range, the little green radius here, they'll seek out that object and use it properly to satisfy themselves. So keep that in mind. Now you may want to build more later on as your aquarium gets bigger for more capacity. So then, let's divert next into our staff. Now our staffing goes. There's a couple of different things to pay attention to with our staffing. The immediate thing that you'll see here is their skills. Obviously, you gotta have people to feed, you gotta have people to fix, because like I said, it's not if your machines will break, it's when. So you gotta have, at minimum, at the beginning of any given aquarium, a feeder and a fixer. And yes, you can have one employee do both of those, but I tend to like to have 2 employees, one dedicated feeder, one dedicated fixer. Now, who do we pick? Who's best of the bunch here? Who's the cream of the crop? Well, you got to look at a bit more than just the skills. The other thing you want to take a look at is not only their skill, but their effective skill. So Isla here has an effective feeding skill of 2, or has a skill of 2, which actually translates to an effective base skill of 20. But because she's got a high empathy skill here, that gives points. So her effective feeding skill is actually 28. So she's almost as good as a neutral traded skill 3 person. So she can actually do some decent feeding here. And she's not that expensive. That's the other thing you want to pay attention to, especially in the later levels. Sometimes you'll be offered these dream employees that can do everything. And that's all good. That's all well and good, but they're expensive. And if you think about it, an employee at any given time can only use 1 skill at a time. So it's best to actually just hyper-focus them. Find the people that are good at one thing and get them even better at that thing. Now that being said, there are some skills that are worth splashing, like cleaning. You have to have a gigantic aquarium before cleaning becomes, having someone doing nothing but cleaning is going to be an in-demand skill. So splashing in cleaning here, not necessarily a bad thing. So I do usually like to go for Isla as my first one. Now Zhao here, if we look at Zhao 1 feeding skill, he's actually a really, really lousy feeder. But we go down here, he's actually a pretty halfway decent fixer. Not only does he get that extra bonus from memory, but because of his memory, he will be gaining skill levels pretty quickly. So we can train him even further and faster in fixing. So over time, as the demands of our machines grow, his skill will grow and be able to keep up. You'll eventually need to get a second person, but he can handle it pretty well. And we also have the splash skill of the gift shop, which at the moment in this particular scenario is useless, but once we start getting gift shop items going, then that will be very valuable as well. So I'm going to get Zhao over here. Boop. And that, my friends, is aquarium layout and staffing. So, in our next video, we are going to be covering the real reason you guys are probably here, and that is fish. How do we assemble our aquariums? What are some of the strategies, tactics, and tips when it comes to building your tanks and filling them properly? What's the best way to get the most out of your available fish, and what fish and how many should you make? That will all be covered in my next video. So, if you guys like this episode and you want to see more like it, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a comment. Good, bad, or indifferent, your feedback's always welcome. So until next time, this has been Pinstar signing out. See ya!